This is a wind instrument. It doesn't work like other wind instruments like clarinets and saxophones and trumpets and flutes, but it does work. It really does work, and also it's very easy to make, and it's easy to make with inexpensive and widely available materials. I haven't encountered any pre-existing names for this instrument, so I've been calling instruments of this type membrane reeds. And in this video, we're going to see a whole bunch of different ways you can realize the membrane reed idea. I won't go into much detail at all about the acoustics or much about how to build these things. So if you're interested in those kinds of details, please have a look at the article that is posted online at the URL that you can see on your screen now. I stumbled on the underlying principles of membrane reeds in my own explorations long ago, and I'm sure that others have found them as well. But I later learned, this was probably in the early 1990s, that instruments of this type were being made by children in Indonesia for sale to tourists. And the design of the Indonesian instruments was better than anything I or anyone else I knew had come up with. It works in a manner closely analogous to the way traditional reed instruments work, yet it uses completely different materials in a completely different form. Here you can see the components: a plastic film canister, a piece of cellophane wrapper, a section of nominal half-inch PVC tubing, and a short section of smaller diameter tubing. The middle of the bottom is drilled out of the canister to fit tightly over the PVC tube. And a small hole is drilled in the side to take the smaller diameter blow tube. The canister's lid has been cut away, leaving just the rim so it can hold the cellophane in place without obstructing it. And here we have a one-note membrane reed instrument. Sounds good enough, but we can add some more notes if we add some tone holes. For this quickie instrument, I'm making a random scale by just drilling the tone holes wherever my fingers happen to fall comfortably on the instrument when I hold it in playing position. And here's the finished instrument. A nice little 5-note scale. This version of the instrument is like the one I just assembled, except that I took the time to give it a more coherent scale in the placement of the tone holes, and also I colored it to make it look less plasticky. And here's one made of bamboo because a lot of people don't like plastics. A little harder to make, but it plays just as well. The greatest challenge in making and playing membrane reeds is accuracy of pitch. Putting a tone hole in a certain carefully chosen location along the tube does not guarantee that you're always going to get the same pitch. The pitch depends a lot on the tension on the membrane and on the force of blowing. And this is especially true on small instruments. There are some things you can do to mitigate this, there's ways you can manage it, but it's always going to be a consideration. Membrane reeds can work well down in the lower ranges. Longer air columns have the helpful effect of stabilizing the pitch a bit. Here's a set of long membrane reeds. No tone holes in these. Each is good for one note. And here's a long membrane reed with tone holes, played through a blow tube, tabletop style, with a keyboard. Aside from the outer barrel instruments we've been seeing, there are other ways to make the membrane read idea work. For instance, you can use the pullover system shown here. In this design, the membrane can be made from a latex balloon with the neck of the balloon serving as a stretchy blow tube. Hold the instrument as shown so that the neck, slightly stretched, pulls down over the rim of the main tube and blow. It might take a moment to get the angle and the stretching just right, but when you do, you'll get the classic membrane read effect. Here are a couple of simple pullover membrane reads I made many years ago. This one is a piece of steel tubing. And this one is made of seaweed, bull kelp. It's a kelp horn with a piece of gourd around the end here. The pullover system also works nicely for big bass instruments like this one. The pitch on pullover membrane reeds tends to be extremely bendy and wobbly, depending on how much tension you put on the neck, whether you stretch the neck a lot and put tension on the membrane. So on an instrument like this, with no tone holes, you can still get quite a nice range. I mean, your intonation may be pretty sloppy, but you can still cover a good range just by how much tension you put on the membrane, how much you stretch the neck, and also by finger pressure directly on the membranes. Here are several big membrane reeds with tone holes. Each one of these has a couple of tone holes. You can see this one has sort of a levering system and a big tone hole here. You can get a little extra range with the tone holes, and you can add to it by the neck stretching technique and finger pressure directly on the membrane. You don't get a huge range, but enough to have some fun. And one more just for fun. Here's an instrument called Mo-Mem, which is a membrane reed using the Mo pitch control system. It's a special system that allows sliding pitch across the instrument's entire gamut. And that's it for this video. Remember, if you want more information on these instruments or on membrane reeds in general, you can find it in the article posted at the URL showing on the screen now. Thanks.